Hey guys, Cam McClellan.
Al Lewison.
Welcome to today's Wealth WOD.
Workout of the day.
We get lots of questions about subdivision. Al and I started out, our first properties we bought we subdivided and built units on the backyard and used the equity to buy new ones and keep steamrolling.
Well, specifically the questions are, should I buy something subdivide and build, or should I buy an investment property? That's a specific question we get very regularly.
And why don't you do subdivisions anymore as opposed to buying standard prices?
So we talked about it before, but there's 4 different types of money. There's income, self-employed, business,
and investment.
Well, that's a wage, and investment.
There you go. So wage, so time spent for dollars earned. Self-employed, you own a job. Business, you've got a business that generates money while you're doing videos. Or investment. So the raw rule on this is, Al, is people are going to be doing one of these. Everyone's going to do one of these. If you're doing one of these, you need to be
doing that one.
You have to be doing that. Otherwise,
always be investing, ABI.
Yeah. So what we do is...
So let's just talk about investment property versus doing a development.
Yeah, if I look at an actual risk matrix, so if we do this a different way and we go, where we do risk versus reward. So this is high risk, high reward, low risk, low reward, etc., etc. So obviously we want...
Can we see that? I think we can see it.
Low risk,
high
reward. This is the box we want to be, yeah? And this is bad. So bad box, bad box, bad box, good box, yeah? I like low risk, high reward.
Pretty Sounds good.
Why do I want that?
Sounds appealing.
If I go, here's today, and this is the thought process Al and I had way back when. If this is today, and 15 years down the track, I want to be financially independent. We'll use 15 years as sort of worst case because it might take you the first 5 to build your portfolio, then wait a whole cycle till it doubles. What's going to get me there? I don't care what it is. I just want to know that in 15 years I'm going to get there. Pretty basic. So when we're looking at investments, Al and I would sit down and we'd go, which box does it fit in? And which has risk that I'm not going to get there on my 15-year mark? So run through a few.
Yeah, right.
Back to the dual locks.
And look, anyone who's been to our workshops, they will have seen us talk about how we assess different opportunities at any given time. So similar to that, where we knock some things out, we throw some ideas around. But doing a development, buying a piece of land and looking to develop it, is maybe rewarding, but some risks that don't guarantee me in the 15 years I can get there.
I'd say potentially high reward.
Potentially.
But very high risk.
So the risks are planning risk. You might buy something hoping to get a permit for it and not get a permit. Time to get the permit might drag out. Cost to get the permit might drag out. Might design the wrong thing to go on there.
Preliminaries is a big one. Unforeseen cost for people who haven't done developments before is huge, and I even got caught out on this a number of times. So the unforeseen costs were preliminaries, open space tax, all the fees that go along with council approvals. But the big one that really nailed me one time was, and I had to sell the site before even developing it, was designing something that was not the optimum size property for that area. So that was going to cost me another 40 grand per unit to build, but I get no more in sales value.
So a really good point there is often, so we'll say to people, you've got some risk in planning. So a way that people think, I'll de-risk that, I'll buy something with a great permit. So often people are selling things because the permit isn't quite right.
I was a classic example. I sold something with a planning permit in place because it was a terrible design, and that was my flaw for not understanding the design. Someone else bought it and built it, and they took on my risk.
I've read something recently that out of every 10 permits granted by council, only 3 are getting built. The reason for that is that people can't go and fund them, people have trouble getting the pre-sales to meet bank requirements, that permits aren't right, they aren't profitable, so people try and sell them. That's a staggering number, that only 30% of the approvals actually proceed to be developed.
Yeah. So basically going on the rule of going, I have to get to financial freedom in 15 years, the only investments that I'll take on are low risk and high reward. So 8% growth on a standard investment property over a 15-year period, 8% growth when I'm using other people's money is actually a much greater return on my money. So if I'm putting 50 grand, getting 400 grand worth of the bank's money, for example, and then getting 8% growth on that on average, That's a huge actual return back on my dollars invested, as opposed to putting 50 grand, or it's actually about 200 grand you need to put into a dual lock to get it even slightly off the ground.
Now, the reason that we moved away from dual locks and moved towards the house and land type investments we do now is that we could put in place a process that we could repeat time after time after time, again and again. Any day of the week, we could use our map process, knock out the areas we don't want to be in, find the right property in the right area, and buy an investment property and repeat over and over. So,
yeah, okay.
Over 15 years, that process we felt was the safest to get us where we want to go.
Actually, what happened, it got to this point, during late 90s, early 2000s, Melbourne was cranking. So for us, duals during that market worked really well. But then it got to the point where the Melbourne market had started to flatten out, or there was uncertainty for us because we had so much strong growth. If we kept doing developments, and basically a lot of our mistakes were taken care of because the market moved and had an uplift anyway. So if we just bought a standard house, it would have gone up anyway. But at this point in time, you can't keep developing as a long-term plan across 15 years because of the market you're sitting in, because you have to be there to run the site. So we found that it's easier to go, take our money we'd made, jump into Brisbane, move across to Perth, move into other capital city markets, which will continually get us the growth.
What's that you say? What's that? You guys develop? Great question. Yes, we do develop. That's excellent. So what we also worked out about this time is he talking to?
No one talking to him.
He's gone crazy. What we also found out at this time, or what we've realised, is there's a development space called the recreational developer space. Now what that means is every man, his dog and his cat are out in the market competing for developments in this space. Let's call it sub $5 million.
So let's say there's probably 3 big stages of development. So you've got recreational developers, so what's up to about, say, 5 mil? Up to 5 mil. So this is your
mums and dads, or your guys who have got to 60 and sold their business being doctors and decided they can be a developer.
A dozen unit sort of sites. You've got a space at the top end of the town where you've got basically Grollo. They're building Eureka Tower, so skyscrapers. What we found was the issue we had, obviously we haven't got the expertise, or we didn't have the expertise 10 years ago to play in this space. It's a very unique space you need. At this end of the market, we found that anyone could afford a site around that, under 5 mil, so standard builders, mum and dads. There was a lot of people bidding on sites. They were uneducated, so they were paying too much, which made the margin skinnier. So we decided, let's pool our money and build sites between 5 mil, which is now probably, I don't know, 25 mil we look at, and $150 million sites. If we pooled our money together, which now that is what OpenCorp do, we do crowdfunding to develop sites together, so lots of people put their money together, we buy a block of land. There was much more margin in this area, and we had the skill set to deliver it.
There's less competition out there when you're looking to find sites. The other thing we did is that we've talked before that if you buy a development site to do a subdivision or an investment property, that there's risk. There's risk in the subdivision aspect. So, as a business, we're doing developments, but we employ professionals full-time, a whole team of them, to do the projects, to run them. They're called development managers. These guys are qualified engineers, qualified town planners, they're qualified architects. They're people expressly trained in delivering projects at a high level.
Which reduces our risk. 24
hours a day, that's all they do. That is their job, to deliver them. Not you're going to work as a sales rep and trying to make some phone calls in your spare time to run your little Geelong site.
Which is what we used to do.
Risky. They're professionals doing the job.
So end result is find out what the safest thing is, low risk, high return, which will get you there in 15 years. Understand your skill set, what you're able to deliver, and then buying 5 basic house land packages will get you there in 15 years. Investing in a couple of projects will assist you to fast track that.
Adios.
Cheers guys.